Hello, I'm Sally Wiener-Grada, and this is What If, Why Not, How? Where I ask people who have interesting stories and ideas questions that are on my mind. My guest today is Kim Coleman Foote. Kim's debut novel, Coleman Hill, has been getting so much praise, including from me. I think it's fabulous. It's been named a finalist, very recently, a finalist for the Carol Shields Prize for Fiction, which is a very big deal. The NAACP Image Award and the Audio Award, and long-listed for the Center for Fiction First Novel Prize. All very impressive. She has also received fellowships from the Fine Arts Work Center at Provincetown, the NEA, that's another big deal, the New York Foundation for the Arts, Breadloaf, Phillips Exeter Academy, Center for Fiction, and Anna Fulbright, and various artist residencies at places like Yaddo, MacDonald, and Hedgebrook, among others. Her fiction and essays have appeared in the Best American Short Stories of 2022, The Rumpus, Prairie Schooner, and elsewhere. And she's a prolific writer, though this is a debut novel. Welcome, Kim, and congratulations on all the praise.
Thank you.
So exciting.
Thanks.
You're just back from the Carol Shields Prize.
Yes,
Could you
I
tell
am.
us a little bit about why that's such a big deal?
Yeah, so as I discovered, it is the largest literary prize in the entire world, which wasn't something that I really knew before going into it. I knew that the change purse was huge. But, I felt extremely honored to be nominated for this prize because, it's named in the honor of Carol Shields, who had issues, with her publication or being recognized being a woman. And so the fact that her family and friends created this prize in her honor to recognize other women writers, it's very special.
Yeah.
And to be one of 5 finalists out of, they said, 250 books published last year that were nominated by publishers. That was really, really special. I can't even find the words for it. Special doesn't really do it justice, but yeah, I mentioned I was jumping up and down and screaming when I found out about the short list. And it was such an honor to be there and to be received by everyone.
And you were one of only 2 debut novelists.
One of only 2, yes.
That's even more. Yes. I mean, it's all like you were with these people who have produced before.
Yes.
This is your first baby.
Well, yes and no. It is my first published novel.
Yes,
I mean,
of
which
course.
also, to have published multiple novels, but it's not the first manuscript that I've written.
Oh.
And I love to make that clear because I think sometimes when we read people's bios and it's like, this is a debut novel. It's like, yes, but okay, for someone, I always get a little bit suspicious because if something is super accomplished and just it flows, all of that, it's like, no, I don't think this is the first thing this person has ever written. Yeah. So I've been writing technically since I was a little girl.
Yes.
And this Coleman Hill is actually my 3rd manuscript post MFA.
Marvelous.
So
Yeah.
yes. So I've been honing my craft for a long, long time.
I remember being told, it was a quote from somebody famous, I don't remember who, when I was first setting out as a youngster, I wanted to be a writer, I'm going to be a writer. And they said, you have to write 1 million words before you can be a real writer. And I think we both have.
Oh, yes. Probably
Now,
more.
Before we start our chat, could you please read a little bit of Coleman Hill so our audience can get a sense of why we're all raving about it?
Sure. I'll read an excerpt from... So Coleman Hill is based on my real life family, and it talks about their great migration journey coming up from Alabama and Florida to New Jersey, which is where I grew up. And the section I'm going to read from, I actually read for the Shields Prize events over the weekend, but I'll read just a little bit longer. And it's from a section entitled The Meanest Woman, circa 1926. And this section is inspired by my great-grandmother and her mother-in-law, my great-great-grandmother, respectively.
I loved this chapter.
Oh, thank you. So you'll probably love the section that I'm planning to
Yes.
read. Okay. Lucy is an hour late coming home. The autumn sky has turned violet, and the wind nips at her neck through her scarf, but Lucy takes her time walking from the streetcar stop. 2 more hours, she thinks with relief. 2 more hours of seeing the mother's face and hearing her voice. She pushes open her front door and anticipates the mother's barrage with a grin. A few of the children rush into the parlor from the kitchen, where she smells chicken boiling. They ambush her, searching her coat pockets for the candy she now brings home on Friday nights like her husband Solomon once did. She giggles, stripping off her coat and leaving it on the settee for them to squabble over. In the kitchen, her daughter Bertha looks up expectantly at Lucy's approach, her glossy pigtails quivering. She sits at the table peeling potatoes. The mother, standing at the sink, stops chopping. "Gal, ain't I tell you to stay right there till you finish?" The mother continues whacking chicken parts with her cleaver, hard enough to leave marks in the counter. Before Solomon died, it would have driven Lucy nuts. Now she wants to snicker, especially when the mother starts her grumbling. "So you decide to finally show up, huh? I gotta do everything in this house, mind your childrens when you don't come home on time, and cook for everybody too? And you better stop giving them all that damn sugar before they suck. Sure way to lose their appetite and their teeth." All those times Solomon brought candies, the woman was silent, of course. Lucy leans against the door frame and opens her purse, fingering the envelope inside. "Bertha," she says, "go on upstairs and take the children with you." The mother whirls around, pointing her cleaver at Bertha. "Don't you dare move your behind from that seat." Bertha glances between them, eyes wide. Lucy strolls over and touches her shoulder, which tenses. Staring at the mother, Lucy squeezes her daughter, saying, "You go on now. I got this." As Bertha drops her paring knife and scrambles off, the mother places her hands on her hips. Lucy, feeling her heart thumping, spreads her feet to mirror the mother's stance. The mother's eyes narrow to slits as the children gallop up the stairs. From the sound of it, they've paused halfway up, and Lucy can imagine them peering into the kitchen through the banister. Any other time, she would switch to Pig Latin to hide her words, but now she doesn't care anymore. "Miss Stella, we gotta—" "What you say?" The mother turns and dumps chicken parts into the pot on the stove. "Can't nobody hear you whispering like that." Lucy pulls the envelope from her purse, annoyed that her kneecaps shake like jello fresh from the icebox. "I got something for you." The mother frowns. "What that?" "Your train ticket home." She barks a laugh. "My what?" "I said it's your train ticket back to Alabama." The mother humps and turns to stir the pot. "Train leaves midnight tonight." "Girl, you must have lost your mind." "This my house now, Miss Stella. I'm Solomon's next of kin, not you. That mean I decide who to stay under my roof. I already wrote Dinah and told her to expect you." Staring back at Lucy are fierce eyes, the eyes of a colored woman who faced a redneck skun and lived to tell about it, who is rumored to have killed her husbands, who now holds a cleaver that she slowly turns in her hands. "My son brought me up here and I ain't going nowheres." Lucy claps her hands to steady their trembling. "Mr. Dowling from across the street gonna drive you to the Pennsylvania station. He be here in about 2 hours. Like hell he will." Taking a deep breath, Lucy raises her voice. "If you ain't packed soon, I'll do it for you. God be my witness." The shock registers in the mother's eyes. Lucy has taken the Lord's name in vain. Lucy tosses the envelope onto the kitchen table. The mother steps close, and Lucy shrinks back, eyeing the cleaver. "And how you gonna take care of all those children? You thought about that while you done gone wasting my son's insurance money on a ticket?" Lucy thinks of the bank account she recently opened, her first. The dollar amount listed at the top of her checkbook is more than she's ever seen in her life, and she's earmarked it to buy a house, with very little left over for a rainy day. She swallows hard. "Yes, ma'am, I have. God's gonna make a way. He always do." The mother points her cleaver, making Lucy take another step back. God gonna punish you. That's what he gonna do, but you making me leave my grandchildren. Lucy swivels her head and frowns. Oh, so now you believe they Solomons? The mother clenches her mouth. You got plenty to look back home to look after, Miss Stella, and a lot of boys too, even if none of them gonna carry the Grimes name like mine. The mother's chin ripples and her eyes water. Lucy has never seen the old goat cry, and the sight of it scares her. Lucy suddenly sees her how Solomon must have, small, barely reaching Lucy's shoulders. The smooth, dark skin belies the fact that she's lived 7 decades, if not for the creases now formed from her pout. Stella Grimes is a tired old woman, a mother who has already outlived 2 of her children, who lost her husband around the same age Lucy is now. And it happened in Alabama, where life was barely better than when she'd been a slave. Lucy feels the cruelty in sending her back to that place. She wants to step closer and pull the woman into her arms like she remembers her mama doing with her and tell Stella everything will be okay. They'll get through this. Lucy could learn to tolerate her, ignore her insults, let her live out her final days, which are numbered, after all, in the promised land. But there is that cleaver between them.
Marvelous. Your characters are so vibrant and so textured. It's a delight to hear you read it after I've spent the time reading it.
Yes, thank you.
It's delightful. Now, Coleman Hill has been called a biomythology.
Mythography, yes.
Mythography, excuse me.
Biomythography.
Yes. Anyway, could you please explain that?
Yes. So the term was invented by Audre Lorde, the poet and writer. And I was trying to figure out what to call this book at some point because it wasn't exactly fiction or completely fiction. You know, I'm using some personal details from my family's life, you know, to build these stories. And I was thinking at some point, oh, Alex Haley, of course, did that with Roots, you know, but he called this process faction. And I just didn't like that word. And then I remembered Audre Lorde's Zami, her memoir, which I had read during my MFA program, which is where Coleman Hill began. It came from a writing exercise that I had during my MFA program. And I remember when I read Zami, I was like, well, what is this biomythography thing? Because, I mean, this just reads like a regular memoir. I mean, I believe everything. There's nothing unusual going on. And then later to hear Audre Lorde describe it as a work of art that combines many sources to create a modern myth, a new history, I realized that was exactly what I was doing with my book because I was taking my family's oral histories. I was taking my years of genealogical research, which is my hobby. You know, there's pictures on the cover and inside the book, there's an artifact. So bringing all of those elements together along with my imagination and my fiction, you know, to actually create scenes and dialogue, because I have no idea what my family said to each other in the 1920s, let alone 1980s when I was, you know, alive. You know, so to bring in those fictional elements, bringing all those elements together, you know, I felt that biomythography was a really apt term for it.
Yeah, it is very much so. Now, the photos, you have photos introducing chapters throughout the book. Am I correct in assuming they are actual photos of your family, or are they found photos?
Most, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So which came first, the story or the photos? Or how do they interrelate in your creative process?
So I would say, well, just in the grand scheme of things, the stories came first, and they came when I was a little girl because I always heard these stories every holiday gathering. My mother and her siblings and cousins, they'd always get together and talk about their lives, you know, their childhood back in the 40s, you know, then her aunts, you know, would talk about their lives, etc. So I always heard these stories. And like I said, I actually had an assignment during my MFA program. I was taking a creative nonfiction workshop. And the assignment was to write a story based on a photograph. And I chose this one of my grandfather's 3 sisters as little girls. And basically the voice of the middle one spoke to me. And she said something like, "I ain't afraid of that man or his camera." And I was like, "What?" And her voice just kept pouring. And I literally grabbed a pen and notebook and wrote it down, what she was saying. And it was an unusual experience for me as a fiction writer because even though it was a creative nonfiction class, when I write fiction, I don't actually hear words. I see movies in my head. And then I have to translate that into words. For years, that was just, it was so complicated because I'm like, I'm already seeing this beauty and now I have to figure out like even what to write about and describe, not to mention crafting my words so that it sounds good. And so the fact that this voice just came to me like that, and I wrote the whole thing in about 10 minutes. And this is someone, anytime anyone talked about her and the family story, she was always vilified. No one ever had a positive
Wow.
word to say about her. And the fact that I'm seeing her now as this little girl, this little tough, brazen little girl, and something's happened to her at that time, to make her in that photograph have this already kind of fierce look in her
Yes.
eyes because, she's like holding this dog, cutting off its air circulation. She already looks like, if she had a knife and hiding her in her dress, that she would cut you with it. And, to me, it was like, okay, well, maybe this is the genesis of why she's looking like that, even at such a young age, and why she became the adult that she did. And so I tried to basically replicate that. I took other photographs, to try to mine, I guess, channel, my ancestors. And, again, going in thinking of the little snippets of anecdotes that I had about certain ancestors and trying to build narratives around their lives.
Right. So you started with family stories and you
Mhm.
had to fill in the details with research and
Yes.
what was your research process?
So my research process, it was inadvertent because, like I said, genealogy was my hobby. I mean, I had been doing genealogy for like, by the time I started at Coleman Hill, I probably was just a few years in to my genealogical research. But even in those couple of years, it was like less than 10 years in. But I had accumulated so much information, so many census records. I had interviewed relatives. I had gotten pictures, all of that kind of stuff. So because I wasn't thinking I was writing a book about my family.
Yeah.
And I just continued doing that for years and years so that by the time I was really working on Coleman Hill, I already had that whole accumulation of material to go on.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I didn't necessarily do intentional research a lot for this book, even though I love history, I love research. I wanted a PhD in history at some point. My next book to be published by my publisher, Zando, was probably over research. I've probably done enough research to amount for a PhD. Like literally, my bibliography is like probably like at least 25 pages long. And I got the Fulbright that I got was to go to West Africa. It's looking at the slave
Oh,
trade in Ghana. So I got a Fulbright. I did research in person. I interviewed people. I
wow.
learned the language, like so many research, yeah, so much research. But for Coleman Hill, what I realized is that for me, it wasn't so much getting the history right. It was from my next book that was like a huge concern,
Yes.
because I'm looking at African history, which has been, again, demonized, misrepresented. So I really wanted to get like a nuanced, balanced, and more accurate, portrayal than what we typically see the stereotypes about Africa. But for Coleman Hill, it was more about getting these people right, and getting their motivations right. So
Yeah.
more of like I call it a forensic psychology, more trying to figure out why they did the things that they did to each other.
What was your family's reaction while you were writing? Did you have to be wary about possible personal sensitivities? Was that in the back of your mind while you were writing this?
It was, because this is not my personal story that I'm putting out there. But I mean, I'll just have to say that my first MFA, my MFA thesis was a memoir about my own life. So I wasn't shy about writing about my own experiences. Um, but I would say, like, I didn't tell my family that I was working on
Oh,
this. Yeah, and I chose to do that because I didn't want them to come in and say, "Well, no, you can't write about XYZ." I
Mm.
didn't want that to be a barrier because I had attended several workshops, over the years, whether it was AWP or, other conferences, and I would always be, interested in hearing how people were talking about writing about family. So
Hmm.
whether that was through fiction, nonfiction, and basically from all those different people, everyone, had a different approach, but there were kind of basically three outcomes that I was seeing. Either family liked what people wrote and were excited about it. They didn't like what they wrote, and sometimes to the point of disowning and even trying to sue, the writer. But I guess those were like the two big outcomes. But I also saw like basically people would get mad that the author had included some sensitive detail, or they would get mad that the author didn't include some sensitive detail, and the person would be like, but I thought you wouldn't want, but you wrote about everybody else and you didn't write about me. So it was like, okay, damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Hmm.
So seeing that, I was like, well, you never know like what someone will feel. And so for me, the idea was just, again, I'm being truthful as I can to these characters and the situations. And then I hope that my family can see that, I'm putting this work out there not to misrepresent my family or tarnish my family. If anything, I feel like I give a or more balance perspective of these family members who did some horrible things, than has been in the stories that have survived about them. So far, so good. My family, I haven't heard anything negative about the book.
How did you balance between family stories, which are legendary in your family, that they're the foundational stories of your existence,
Mm-hmm.
and your imagination and facts that you've gleaned, not just in your genealogy, but knowing the times and the places that you were writing about? How did you work out that balance?
Yeah, I don't know.
It seems like quite a tightrope that you walked there.
Yeah, I mean, so that whole conversation, that I think it goes on for like another book page or two. And it was really hard to write because, again, I see cinematically,
Hmm.
so to have to write line by line by line and then action and dialogue, like I was just like, oh God, this is tedious. And so for the longest time, I put like in brackets, like confrontation scene goes here. And I was
Okay.
just like, so even with that, it's like, okay, the biggest point that I wanted to get across was that one of the stories that really resonated with me was the fact that my great grandmother kicked out her mother-in-law, who
Mm,
was this very kind of like scary,
yeah.
scary woman. And she'd been born a slave, and she had this reputation. So it's called the meanest woman because passed down to me from my relatives. She was known as the meanest woman in the county. Okay. And my great grandmother, from the story, she was always, presented as someone who was very sweet and loving. And so the fact that, she kicked out her mother-in-law, like, what was that? That must have been super intense that she kicked out this woman who was, pretty kind of scary.
Yeah.
And so I was just imagining, how that dynamic would go, and, what will be happening in that scene. And I know like one version came to me from one of the children. So I figured that the children had witnessed it,
Hmm.
even if they were kind of snooping around the corner,
Yeah.
listening in, so I thought I'm thinking about cinematically again. I see the house, and the house
Yes.
is the house that I used to visit when I was a little girl. So I can see the layout of the
Oh.
house. I can see her walking in and okay, positioning where would her mother-in-law be, where would the children be, what are people wearing, and then thinking more like what are the smells around? Okay, someone's cooking. What does that smell like? What is that? And so that's where the extra details came in of cooking the chicken, and it's
Hmm.
during 1920. That's like I guess before the Depression, but they were poor. So what are they cooking? They're not cooking this fancy meal, so building in those layers and layers and layers
Hmm.
of textures, throughout.
Well, it worked, whatever it is that you did.
Thank you.
What suggestions do you have for other writers who may want to write their family stories as memoir, as fiction, as a combination? Just what suggestions do you have for them?
Right.
Just keep writing.
I mean, that's a suggestion I have for anyone who's like, what should I'm just write,
Yeah.
and I would say like write as if it would never get published, and I think that's probably essential for any writing, to write it because it may not ever get published. At some point I thought I would never get published because, again, this is my third manuscript, like I said, post MFA. I did not think it would take me by any means this long to publish a book. And so it might never happen, but if you don't put out your best, you never know what you can do. If you don't get started writing, you never know what you can do, because I mean, I meet people all the time like, I want to be a writer. It's like, okay, that's cool. Sure, I want to be a singer, but like, I mean, there's a lot of things I want to do. I want to skydive, but I'm like kind of afraid of heights. So, it ain't happening. So, if you want to do something, do it.
Yes.
Do it.
What I usually tell writers is butt to chair, hands on keyboard.
Exactly.
And until you do that.
Look, I'll keep it even basic. You don't have because I'm like, oh, I've heard people say like, oh, writing is such a privileged career because, you need to have money and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no. All you need really is a pencil and paper, because that's how I actually started writing, with a pencil and paper. So you don't even need all this fancy technology. You can take it back to basics, writing longhand. Like I said, Coleman Hill for me came out longhand.
Well, a lot of
computer involved.
A lot of very important masterpieces of literature were done with quill by candlelight.
By candlelight, yes.
Which I can't imagine. Have you ever tried reading your own handwriting by candlelight?
No. I have a quill that someone gave me, but to think about dipping that thing in ink and you had to blot it and just, oh my God.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, my favorite story is, whenever I had writer's block, I think it was the Kenyan writer Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who was in prison and wrote a novel on like toilet tissue when he was in his jail cell.
Oh, wow.
And so whenever, I can't think of, I can't, blah, 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 blah. I was like, okay, this dude wrote a book on toilet paper in a jail cell. So what is your excuse? So yeah, just write.
I'm going to remember that one. So you mentioned the novel that's apparently in production now, or
I'm rewriting it.
You're rewriting it now.
Yes.
Does it have a title yet?
Yes, it's called Saltwater Sister.
Oh, I like that title.
Thank you.
That's a nice one. Do we have a timeline on it?
Yes. If I can finish it on time, it's set to be published next year.
Wow.
Yes.
That's very exciting.
Yes.
Well, I wish you all the luck with that one too. I'm sure it's going to be brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me.
Thank you,
and
Sally,
I look
for
forward to
having
seeing you at AWP again next year.
Yes.
My guest today was Kim Coleman Foote, and her brilliant debut novel is Coleman Hill, which was published by the Sarah Jessica Parker imprint at Zando Projects. You can learn more about her work on her website, which is kimfoote.com, and connect with her on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. As for me, my two newest books are Of Being Woman, a collection of feminist science fiction, and that's from Noble Fusion Press, and Daughters of Eve from Buy It Publishing, which is an essay-based workbook and journaling guide for exploring the nature of our lives today through the lens of the stories of the women of the Hebrew Bible, such as Sarah, Hagar, Rebecca, Deborah, and so forth. My website and blog are at sallywienergrata.com. My videos are also on my website as well as on YouTube. And you can also connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, and sometimes on Blue Sky. I haven't really gotten into that one yet. If you want to stay in touch with me and read about my rather ridiculous adventures and also quandaries, philosophical quandaries, please sign up for my newsletter on my website. Thank you, and thank you, Kim, so much.
Thank you, Sally.